Hey, Facebook, welcome to another episode of the Kingdom Effect. This is episode 15. I'm here with Kevin and Carissa. Kevin, what's up, man? How was your week, brother?
Dude, it was good. I got home from Orlando, and it was funny. I think I said this last week, but I met my family halfway. Literally, we're 5 hours each direction. We met in Macon, Georgia, and spent the day together. So I got to see them for one day before we're apart again for a week. So 2 weeks without the 19-month-old baby is super sad.
So, 2 weeks of the bachelor life.
That's right. Yeah, last week was so busy though, I didn't really get a chance to enjoy it. This week, we'll see. I don't know. It's pretty busy this week too, but
Awesome.
yeah. How are you, man? How's your week been?
Man, what's today? Monday?
Yes,
Been pretty
Monday.
good so far.
It's still Monday.
What? So the typical question: what'd you do today? Did you work at all?
For a little bit, I started working about 11. I
Yeah,
drove to town, ate lunch with a bunch of buddies of mine for a couple hours, and then went to the jail,
yeah,
talked to some folks, and then came home.
cool. So this weekend's our camping trip, man.
Hmm.
I think we've got like eight, maybe like 8 guys and 4 or 5 kids going, 4 or 5 teenagers. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's 12 total. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you, for those of you who are watching, Glenn actually texted all the guys going that are bringing teenagers and said, "Hey, I'm getting this big giant hunting knife or camping knife for my boy." Now, Scott and I, one of the guys that's going, and we've talked for several years about doing some kind of rite of passage trip for our boys, and we've just never taken the initiative to do it. So, man, I'm so glad you did that. That's awesome. So, what are we gonna do with the knives?
I don't know. We got to think of something cool. Like I was thinking, you know, take our shirts off and get some war paint and dance around the
That would
fire.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Hey,
So,
before we get, I got to do something. Hang on.
oh my goodness, come on!
I gotta get something. Hold on.
He's going to probably grab the knife. So yeah, we're running a little bit later than normal for Facebook Live, so it was my fault. I will claim credit for that. But then
Okay,
get
now
the
I'm ready.
oh, there you go. You've got it. You got it. Should I go get a?
Now I'm ready.
I feel so out of place.
Hey, I've got an extra one, but it would take a minute to get there.
I've got one upstairs, but it would take me a minute as well. So.
I'm ready.
It'd be worth it.
Hey, but get this, guys. Tonight, it was not me that had technical issues. It was Glenn Buckshot Buckley.
You'll never prove it. You'll never prove it happened.
Oh, I recorded the whole thing just to have it.
Proof.
Posterity. Is that why you say it? Posterity or something? Well, cool. You guys are going to have a blast tonight. We have an awesome guest that I've been waiting a long time to get on here, Carissa Ramsdale. So we'll introduce her more, but she leads a really cool equine mentorship program. So we'll get into that more. How's your week been, Carissa?
It's feel like I'm coming in for the landing on Monday and then got to start up again. So it's been a full week, but it's good. But it's been full.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right, Glenn, what's up? We going to do this or you want to chit chat a bit more?
Yeah, no, you can go ahead and kick it off. I just want to say I hope none of the guys that are going sons listen to our podcast because you just gave away the
Oh, you're right. You're right.
the surprise on the camping trip.
Good
Oh
point.
no.
Do you
Keep it
really
secret.
Do you really think teenagers listen to old men talk to other people?
Who are you calling old,
Doesn't
dude?
happen.
Not an old guy.
I don't think. Well, actually, my daughter, my 19-year-old, I think's listened to a couple of episodes. The
No.
only other time they hear it is when I'm editing it and it's running in the background. That's the
You-
only time they hear it.
You
So.
may feel old when we're hiking the gizzard. This
Oh
weekend,
yeah, you
but-
better believe it. I think all of my guys are scared to death. They're super
Yeah.
nervous about the hike.
dude, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough trail. I think it's rated one of the hardest in the state. So
Wow. We'll
Gonna-
make it.
On horseback.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, you guys ready?
yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's do it. Hey guys, welcome back to the Kingdom Effect podcast. This is Kevin Beasley here with my buddy Glenn Buckhouse Buckley. What's up, Glenn? How you doing this week?
You did it again.
I did do Buckhouse again. Let's start over. So for all of you Facebook livers, you get to see behind the scenes.
Oh.
Blooper reel. What the heck is a Buckhouse? Okay, let's try that again. You guys laugh all you want. Laugh all you want. Hey guys, welcome to the Kingdom Effect podcast. This is episode number 16. This is Kevin Beasley here with my good buddy Glenn Buckshot. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing because last week,
You
the
can't read, dude. This is 15.
No, it's 16. We've been saying it wrong the last 2 weeks.
Well, then that's your fault because,
It really is 16.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a dual coming.
I meant to mention that to you the other day, but it is.
okay. At least let me change it so it shows up right on.
Okay, cool.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Continue. I'm sorry.
This is the first time we've ever had to take 2, and now we're on take 3. It's awesome. These Facebook fans are loving it. Okay, let's do this. Now I got to get back in the mindset. Hey guys, welcome to the Kingdom Effect podcast. This is Kevin Beasley with my buddy Glenn Buckshot Buckley, and this is episode 16 of the Kingdom Effect. How you doing, man? What's up, Glenn?
Man, I'm good. I'm ready to go tonight. I've got my hat. Carissa's got her hat. We're ready to talk about some equine mentorship, man.
I know. I feel so out of place. I'm the only one without a hat. But I always feel out of place because Glenn always looks so cool. Got your beard back, your facial hair.
Yes, it's
We
coming
missed
back.
that for a while, and there I am with my little partial beard that I can never grow. So, man, I'm so excited tonight. We've got a great guest that I've been excited for several weeks to get on here. Carissa Ramsdale from Freedom Reigns Ranch. You can find that at freedomreignsranch.com. Reigns is R-E-I-G-N-S. And, man, she inspires me every time I talk to her. So I'm excited for you guys to hear her backstory, how she got into this, and what God's currently doing in the ministry. So, Carissa, tell us a little bit about what you do at Freedom Reigns.
Well, we essentially use horses and horsemanship to help mentor children and young adults who've been through trauma or just other things in life that have been really challenging for them. We use rescued horses to do that, primarily ones that we've actually rehabilitated from their own abuse and neglect. Basically, pair them together, watch God heal them all.
Yeah, that's amazing. I always thought it was cool that you kind of come from both angles, helping these horses that have been abused, but also people who have been abused. So it's just an amazing thing. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? Like, how do you use horses to mentor teenagers and kids?
So the way God created horses was really intentional. I like to think that they're special to Jesus. I mean, he is coming back on a horse, right? So of all animals in creation, he chooses the animal that is most fearful but most relational to help to redeem his creation. And so basically the way he created them is these strong, powerful, like majestic, but they're prey animals, so they're always afraid. And they always want to they don't ask questions, they just kind of react out of fear. And I feel like in a lot of ways, children, young adults, anyone who's been through trauma or just something that has really rattled them, we tend to operate out of that place of fear. We want to protect ourselves. We want to stay safe. And so the way that you work with horses is engaging them in a trust-based relationship that allows the foundation of being able to accomplish something together. So in the process of learning horsemanship, we use that to introduce spiritual principles and ask really good questions about where they've been and where they want to go, and ultimately pointing them to Jesus if that's what they choose. But basically using the horse and the way God created them to highlight spiritual principles and push them forward. And we use the term spur them forward for a ranch term. And that it really does get accomplished. And it seems so second nature when you're working with a horse. God highlights so many things along the way.
Mm. That's
So
awesome.
did you grow up riding horses?
I didn't. I actually was only allowed to be around horses one time, and that was on my birthday every year. We'd go to the place where you'd ride, and back then it was only like $15 an hour. And the day I fell in love with horses was the day We were out riding in the back part of this trail, and it was led by something spooked the horses. They all took off, bolt, ran like they were getting out of there, and the guide's yelling, pull up, pull up, pull up. And I'm like, no, let's keep going. This is amazing. And that's the day I fell in love with them. Thankfully didn't fall off. They ended up making me stop running. And but yeah, I didn't get to have them growing up. They became a part of my life in college when I realized no one was telling me I couldn't ride. And so what do you do when you're a college student and unfortunately have a credit card that you don't understand the use of yet? You ride as much as you can.
That's awesome. Hey, just to give us like a picture and a little bit of scale of what you do, how many kids do you work with? What is their experience? What do you offer them on a day-to-day basis?
So everyone that comes to the ranch is someone that's self-identified as needing a place to come and have a mentor come alongside them. Most of them have heard about us simply through word of mouth. We do have agencies that do refer to us and encourage their clients to come to Freedom Reins for any various number of reasons. Some of those are government agencies. Some of them are local churches in the area, other nonprofits or ministries that work with youth and young adults in the community. And the circumstances they come with range from everything as, you know, almost everyday commonplaces dealing with anxiety or depression or, you know, having dealt with suicidal tendencies or a challenging divorce or something like that, to on the other extreme of that, we have a group of human trafficking survivors that come out. We have refugees that have come to us with government agency accompanying them. You know, we have survivors of domestic violence, very challenging and heartbreaking situations that just have, you know, they've seen the worst humanity has to offer. And so our job at that point is to come alongside them and be with them as a volunteer mentor. And at Freedom Reins, that looks like essentially 4 different programs. The first is a one-on-one mentorship program, and that is 1 leader and 1 horse and 1 participant. They come for 90 minutes twice a month and get to have that regular relationship with that adult who is there for them, who is caring for them, basically cheering them on. And sometimes sessions are nothing more than just a bright spot in a day, because for so many of these people that have been through these things, they're dealing with all of this stuff outside of the ranch, and the ranch is their safe place. And we often hear like refuge or place of peace, they describe it as, where they just get to breathe and be a kid and have fun and get dirty and muddy and have fun galloping on a horse. And but for other participants, they really do want to go after some of those things and work on things like boundaries and trust and respect and fear and addressing anxiety and things like that in working with a horse. And so once they're in the one-on-one program for a little while, we encourage them into what we call our Junior Ranchers program. And that is small group life and age circumstance-based groups. And those groups are usually about 6 participants, and they work on things together. They come 3 hours twice a month as well. And it's the same group for the entire season. So they really get to build that community around something they've all learned to love, which is horses. We actually encourage them to engage in horsemanship and learning that a little more as a skill and a trade. But most importantly is we do group activities that highlight growth in leadership, in conflict and problem solving, because that naturally comes up when you're working in a group dynamic. And then really encouraging them to be confident, empowered young women. In particular, most of them are young ladies. And from there, it's really cool because most of them never want to leave. And that's a great problem we have, because they get to the point where they're confident, and it naturally turns into wanting to be able to pour back out. And so many of our participants that have gone through the Junior Ranchers program, you know, we are on our 7th year of ministry at this point, and we're seeing basically the first youngest participants at this point that came, you know, as 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, now as young adults, actually serving and leading groups themselves of these Junior Ranchers. And so it's just really, it's awesome to see that, where they've gotten to that point. And then our other program just simply involves family sessions. So for example, these are great for families that have recently adopted or have foster children and need to work on communication and things like that. And so that's another aspect of what we do. And those are just scheduled infrequently when there's a need for it. And right now we have about 50 youth and young adults coming monthly. So they come twice a month. And there are currently 106 on the wait list,
Wow.
which is about 12 to 16 months wait period to get into the program.
Wow.
It's completely free of charge. So that's great because everyone can afford free. But we're just grateful to do what we can.
That's
Carissa,
amazing.
what are the limitations that cause you to have the waiting list?
So there's like a trifecta of things. It's making sure we have the right volunteers in place to be able to lead those sessions. It's making sure we have the horses to be able to use in those sessions that are appropriate for use. And I say that because one horse's threshold may be one session a day, where like we have another horse who you could do 5 sessions a day on him and he'd still be ready to go for more. And we want to honor the fact that these horses, they have likes, preferences, dislikes. We have a responsibility to steward them well and not just say, you have to do this because I want you to. And so that volunteers, horses, and then resources. And resources is a really big one for us right now because we are on a small leased property. We lease 8 acres. Good rule of thumb in Tennessee is 1.5 acres per horse. Right now we have 12 horses. So if you do the math on that, it doesn't quite add up the way it should. Thankfully, a couple of them stay in stalls and one's a mini horse. His name's Goliath. He's like 33 inches tall. So we try to manage that really well. But with our current lease.
Kevin's the mini Kevin.
I have a boy that's a mini me. I mean, he looks just like me, so I understand it. One of the coolest things about how you guys function and work is, and I don't see this often in other nonprofits, but you guys really, from the age of anywhere from 8 to 10, right? What's your youngest?
Our youngest participant that we've ever had is 4, but junior ranchers start at the core programs start at 7 and 8, depending.
Yeah. So, but you have kind of a pathway or a journey all the way through as far as they want to go with you, which is amazing. That they're, as long as they want to continue to get their own healing, but also invest in others, there's a place for them.
Yeah.
That is so cool to see. I think that oftentimes with nonprofits, it's a shorter lifespan of how you can actually invest in a person. But, I do disciple making. Chris and I talk about this a lot. And to be able to see a person go from, 8, 9, 10 years old, come to know Jesus through the help of the ranch, and then see them blossom into someone that's making other disciples that are kids younger than them. Isn't that amazing? So
that's what I mean. That's where it's at. That's what it's about. It's helping people come to know Jesus and watching them do the same. Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to ask you, at some point, can the participants adopt a horse? Do you see people become ranchers beyond the program? Have you had people that come in and go, man, I want some horses at the house?
Yeah. We try to do a good job educating people to make sure if they want to step into that journey of horse ownership, that they know what it takes and what it's required, both in time, commitment, resources, and all that. Whenever we get a rescue in, they never go far. All of our rescues that we've had to rehome, with the exception of one, went to volunteers or within the ranch, because they get to be hands-on part of their rehabilitation and their redemption, and naturally get attached that way. And then it was cool. One of our junior ranchers, now junior volunteer, is looking at some of our college stuff, and she's like, I want to open a Freedom Reins one day. And it was really cool to see that, and so proud of her and just the growth she's experienced at the ranch and what God's doing in her life. And so, we help educate folks if that's something they want to do, and teach all the basic important husbandry and give all the references and referrals for what they need to take care of that horse properly. We're not a large scale rescue because simply space, especially right now. But we partner too with other rescues, to make sure that if we have something in that needs a home, that we find them a great home.
So how do you guys, there's got to be tremendous expense with horses, feed and hay and veterinary things
Yep.
and, all those saddles and just all the many things I probably can't even think of. So how do you guys sustain that right now? Is that through donations or?
Yeah. So being a free of charge ministry, we don't have income from any other source other than people simply partnering with us, believing in what God's doing here and just wanting to help. Most of our donors are private donors or families or individuals or a private family foundation. And then we have some amazing folks like Groove who, have stepped in and really helped shoulder that burden of things that are needed to help sustain the ranch. And, we just calculated out not too long ago, our horses go through 1,700 pounds of feed a month, and 250 pounds of hay per day.
Wow.
So
That's
God.
crazy.
we're proud of our girls. They muscle up and they lift those bags of feed and hay like any guy would, and just they're strong young ladies.
Yeah.
Do you how do people we've got your website down here, freedomrainsranch.com.
Yeah.
Is that where folks can go to find out how they can help?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go on there, there's the donate or give buttons right there at the top and down below. And there's different ways to do that, whatever you're most comfortable. And then there's also, there's a get involved tab for volunteer opportunities too, because we rely on our incredible, amazing team of, we just counted yesterday, 67 volunteers to help power this ranch and pour out. So
what do volunteers do besides, the ones that are teaching how to ride a horse? Do they shovel the stalls out?
Yeah, well, we have participants do that too. So there's everything from simply caring for the horses and our horse care team, making sure they're good, feeding, grooming, holding for the farrier, the vet, helping with basic husbandry, to cleaning stalls, to cleaning and conditioning, tack. Each of those saddles is a leather saddle, so it requires a lot of upkeep and upkeeping land in general, and then making sure that it's suitable and safe for sessions. So literally, if someone has some way to give or some way they want to be involved, we can usually find a spot for them.
Yeah. So do you have a horseshoer?
We do. Our farrier's name is Billy Lampley. He is absolutely incredible.
Buckley, it's called a farrier, not a horseshoer.
It's a horseshoer works.
I only know that because I've been hanging out with Carissa.
Well, I asked that because I have a buddy of mine that lives out here towards Jackson with me, and he's a horseshoer by trade,
Yeah.
and he's also a bivocational pastor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's really cool. Like I see the YouTube videos of various things getting shoed or their hooves cut, and most of the time it's because something bad's happened. But it just seems like such an interesting profession. It's almost like the old school blacksmith. That thing that's kind of gone away. Especially guys that maybe do it in a more traditional way.
It's such a needed thing, and I think what's cool is like all creation speaks God's glory, right? So even as you work, if you've ever spent any time with a farrier, you realize that they craft each shoe to fit each horse's foot, individual foot, and plan for its form and function and purpose, and make sure that shoe is handcrafted to make that horse perform and do the best they possibly can. And like, that's what God does with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool, so definitely spend time with him if you can. I'm sure he probably has a lot of sermons that he's got from working with horses.
Hey, while we're on the topic of the horses, I was in a presentation with you a few weeks ago. Showed pictures of some of the horses you've rehabilitated, and that was amazing. Like literally going from, you can see it just looks like a skeleton with skin on it, to actually looking like a healthy horse. But the coolest thing about that presentation was how the kids kind of adopted or took on the rehabilitation process. So, and even that, I think there was a handwritten letter that a girl wrote. Could you share a little bit about how the kids actually latch on and take ownership of the rehabilitation process?
Yeah, so horses, as livestock in Tennessee, are not afforded some of the same protections that companion animals like cats and dogs are. There are laws, they do need to be enforced, and sometimes that just fails. And people, our neglect of horses or any animal fails when we realize, like, God gave us charge over his creation to be caretakers of it. And so we believe at the ranch that our job is to step in and help in the redemption of that creation when humans have failed. So we've had so many different horses in from any different type of situations, whether it's law enforcement seizure or horses that we've actually had to buy out of situations because the owner refused to sell them unless we actually purchased them to save their life. And so oftentimes on a seizure case or on a case where, there's multiple people involved in helping get these horses homes, you'll get sometimes a choice. And there's horses usually at a seizure site from anything from literally a body score 1. Horses range in body score from 1 to 9. 1 is a walking skeleton, 9 is morbidly obese, and an ideal horse is a 5. And so we've had several body score 1 horses in, which really are near death. And when you take those horses in, that it's always a gamble, because when they're that close to not making it, when all the organs have started shutting down, that you may be beyond being able to allow that horse to continue to live. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let them go, or they have another disease that's causing that. What's really cool is at these seizure sites, we'll talk about it with some of our volunteers and even younger participants that go, and we're like, okay, guys, do we want the easy one? Do we want the hard one? What horse do we want? And it's so cool because they always say we need to have the horse that needs the most love. And they're always like, I don't care if we risk losing them. They need the most love. We need to have them with us because we can give them the most love in the shortest amount of time. And we've seen that just over and over, where they're willing to have that self-sacrificing love, knowing that they're probably going to be hurt. I remember us taking a horse that we're like, guys, or she was the only girl horse we've ever had in our program. We're taking her as a hospice horse. We know she'll probably have about a month at most. And they were like, that's the one we want. Wow. We need to give her the most love because she has the shortest amount of time, and we can do that. And it is a sacrifice. It's every 2 hours around the clock for a couple weeks, refeeding small amounts of grain, because if you give a horse too much that's been truly starved, it will actually kill them if you allow them to eat more than just these little tiny, literally half-pound handfuls of alfalfa. And it's nursing them back to health, knowing that entire time something may go wrong really quickly, but still loving them and doing the most for them. And I feel like, man, that's so God's heart, and that's what's really cool is when they get to see that full redemption, and that horse actually becomes a part of the session program. And they get to say, I saw that horse when he was near death. I saw him on death's door, and I got to be a part of his healing, and I got to be a part of seeing him grow. And now he gets to be a session horse, and now he's helping kids learn. And it's just really, really cool, because you see how God can take something that by the world's standards was thrown away and worthless and worth nothing, and is given the care and the healing and the hope that it needs. And then it goes from that to actually thriving and having purpose, and then getting to help heal others. And it's just really cool.
How did you go from, obviously you had a love for horses as a child, and then that kind of grew in college. How did you go from I love riding horses to I want to turn this into a ministry?
So through a crazy series of events, there was a week that I met my first horse to own. And to explain that requires a little bit of a backstory. Growing up, I had went through a lot of abuse. Sexual abuse for me was the hardest to work through. It led to an eating disorder, self-injury, dealing with suicidal stuff, and ultimately being really mad at God. Like, I could flat out tell you I hated God. I wasn't afraid he was going to strike me down because I hated him. And that driving anger actually manifested itself in performance. So on the outside, everything looked amazing. Like, I was able to do everything really well with a lot of proficiency. And I placed my value and worth in other people's opinions of me. And the more praise I got for how well I did on something, the better I did. And so that became the approval I sought. And all the while just being inside riddled with anger at this God that allowed these horrible things to happen and didn't intervene. And in college, that really started breaking down. But I kept fighting. And it wasn't until my late 20s where my life intersected with my horse. And really what happened is God intersected my life with my horse, because I had been, riding at stables and just getting, any horse experience I could, because that became this thing that I clung to. And I knew there was something, I just felt a lot of peace when I was with them, and I felt a lot of freedom. And, it's almost like when you're on a horse, you really do forget about everything, because you have to be so mindful in the present moment, because if you're not, something can go wrong. And I learned that the hard way many times. So enter my horse, and he's a half Arabian, half thoroughbred. If you know anything about horse breeds, thoroughbreds are racehorses. Arabians are known for being really, really animated and spicy. You put those two together and they exponentially multiply in like this hot-blooded, expressive, spirited horse, which I was drawn to, of course. And he was just misunderstood, was the best way to say it. I didn't know a lot of his history, so I did a lot of research to find it. And he had so many different owners in his life, and the trainers in those circumstances categorized him as mean, uncontrollable, crazy, and then I'll never forget the last one was worthless. And that was said the night I met him, and I was like, don't you dare tell me something's worthless. Like, I see this beautiful animal, so I bought him for $700 and got him back and started working with him, and he was, shall we say, spicy. Like, he knew how to sit back on a halter, which is like, for non-horse people, it's a collar that goes around their head. It's how you lead them around. He knew how to sit back on it, snap it, just simply to let himself free. And he would just run, just for the sake of running. He ran through an electric fence one time. He liked to, don't do it. Don't recommend, 0 out of 10. And he just was, he was so frustrated of everyone telling him, no, don't do that all the time, that the way he expressed it was, get me out of here. I hate small spaces. I hate being confined. Don't tell me what to do. And through this process of starting to work with him and engaging in natural horsemanship techniques, which basically boils down to being an ambassador of yes, like teaching the horse that I am for you, and I want to partner with you, and we're going to do things together. I'm not going to punish you. I'm not going to treat you harshly or unkindly. And, I want to show you what we can accomplish. That in and of itself, I feel like is a way that God got a hold of my heart, is he allowed me to see that the way my horse was acting, always being told no, was making him really resentful, mad, and angry. And he was being really expressive about it. And me feeling like I had been let down time and time again, and being told I had to live a certain way if I wanted to follow God. And it was constrictive, and bottom line is it was from a place of God not rescuing me out of something that I felt like I should have been rescued out of. And God really showed me that his love for me was actually teaching me how to move forward in that, and coming alongside me and teaching me that he was for me and not against me, and that he wasn't going to be the one that would say no all the time, but he has a way to live, and it's good and it's right. And it is to help me move forward, and because there is purpose and there is redemption. And so basically through that, like, God saved my life because of working with my horse. Like, I wasn't saved by a horse. Jesus saved my life. I'll be very clear. And he started using that to just teach me so many different things. And of course there was, people in my life that he had brought in at the time as well, that were asking really good questions at really important times, and not letting me, like, saying things and letting me express questions, and then not fighting the answer, and letting me explore that and wrestle it to the ground. And so, as only God would, he combined it all at the same time. And it was just really cool to realize, like, he saved my life with the use of a horse, And
what's amazing about horses and for me personally, dogs is, man, you can sit and share whatever you want with a dog. I'm sure you can a horse. Just talk their head off about your day and what's bothering you, and they don't even flinch. They're right there listening, and so that's always been cool. I had a dog that was a service dog,
Mhm.
and man, you want to talk about a dog that just you're having a bad day. It's like he sensed it,
Yeah.
and that was so cool. And I'm sure horses are the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just amazing to me because it's hard to even your best of friends. It's hard to just let go and be vulnerable,
Mhm.
to them. But it's so easy to do that with a horse or a dog, or
Mhm.
hopefully you're not a cat lover. But
I like them because they help get rid of mice in the barn if
there you
we're.
go. Yeah, I don't think they're very good listeners, but yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, I would, man, I'm going to come out and visit soon because
That'd be awesome.
I'm dying to see. I rode horses as a young kid. My grandfather had horses, and I used to actually ride them in horse shows. I don't know exactly what I did on the horse. Like, I don't think I was a barrel racer or anything like that. But I just remember my grandfather having horses, and I've got pictures and trophies and whatnot. But it's been a good couple of decades since I've been on a horse.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so I've got the hat. I probably need to get
Yes.
some
We're
cowboy.
gonna make you wear a helmet though. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For
Krista,
safety.
what was the first time that you realized that this healing that you found in yourself can be transferred to other people, or particularly children?
I will never forget it. It was a very clear moment of a young girl that had been essentially nonverbal, and she was interacting with me and my horse Boston, who, remember, is half Arabian, half thoroughbred. And at that time, we had channeled all his energy into eventing, which is like the triathlon of horsemanship. It's show jumping, dressage, and cross country. And so, like, using all that energy for good. And she had come over and in her non-engaging way, like, pointed up at Boston. That was her way of asking, I want to ride him. And I was like, this is not a good idea. Like, this horse literally bucks with me on him and, is playful and also like doesn't like people around his face. He was very head shy. And I'll never forget the moment we were standing in the cross ties, which is a way that you tie a horse when you groom them. And she was helping me groom him. And then she went and lifted both hands right up in his face to go and give him a kiss. And I was like, oh no, it was slow motion, because that would have been a cue for him to sit back on that halter, snap it, and run. And instead of doing that, he actually reached forward into her. And it was so uncharacteristic of him that it got my attention. And I felt like God was like, get ready. Like, this is what we're going to do. And I mean, that's crazy. She could take that horse and trot him bareback around the arena on a loose rein, and he was perfect. Never did anything wrong. But I watched her go from being really shut down and disengaged and to this confident young lady. I mean, she's 4 to going on 5 years old at the time. She's a teenager now. And I'll never forget, I brought her to this little horse show where we were showing, and as the ministry wasn't full-time by any means at that point, it didn't even exist. It didn't have a name. And we were doing this lead line class, which is glorified pony ride, and the kid gets a ribbon at the end and everyone's happy and all the photo ops. But part of the end of that class is you have to talk to the judge and answer questions. And remember, this is a girl that didn't even make eye contact with people she knew. And we led around and she did great. And we walked to the center of that arena and stood there. And the judge said, who's your horse's name? She goes, Boston. Like, just bright-eyed and like confident.
That's awesome.
And she started talking about him, and it was just this, wow, God, look what you've done.
Wow.
Like, this is crazy. And just realized, I remember praying about it, and I remember God saying, like, I've done this with you. Now I'm going to use you to do it with others.
Wow.
But wait, this is his ministry. And so I had to do it his way, which was involving slow process and making sure people were involved, not just me doing things. And he just grew it from, a little girl who loved Boston to now, I mean, the crazy, insane ways it's growing and needed. And it's just really, it's so humbling and it's really cool.
Wow. Yeah, when we talk to people like you and hear their backstory, it's fascinating to hear that people have individual moments, like specific turning points in their life where it's like, and you may not even know what you're going to, but you just know something's different now.
Yeah.
Like
Gets your attention.
What just happened put me on a new course. Like I've had those moments in my life, and I'm sure you have too, Glenn. But yeah, that like as we do these episodes, I just always pray for God to do that in people that are listening. Like even just hearing your story, I just pray that someone says, I can do that. I can say yes to to whatever this is that God's calling me to. And, obviously it's most likely not horses or children but I love hearing those moments where God does something and life is different just all of a sudden, it's cool.
And it's so important, I feel like, because I was thinking about like the podcast tonight, and I'm the most unlikely person to be on a podcast talking about ministry. Like, just no. And like, I think it's just important to realize, like, the moment God gets your attention like that, it's terrifying to say yes. Like truly terrifying. I mean, I ended up stepping away from my career that involved a little, painful pulling away. But like saying yes to that, it's terrifying, but it's awesome. And know that it's going to cost you, but it's so worth it. So worth it.
Yeah, we talk about this often on the podcast, but just put yourself in the shoes of, James and John and, Peter and Andrew, and literally those moments where you have that big of a shift in your life those are the moments that God taps you on the shoulder and asks to follow me, asks you to follow him,
Yeah.
And so just put yourself in the shoes of those guys. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but and then, they're on the journey. They've turned their back on things that was very hard to turn their back on. And then Jesus challenges them with the next hard thing. We used the example a couple weeks ago and where Jesus says, okay, you followed me. Now, if you want to keep following me, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And they're like, what?
Things
but
just
that
got
ended
weird.
that ended up making sense to them, what he meant by that a few weeks down the road. But at the moment, it was just one of those calls that they had to all over say yes again. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's cycles in our life where, we say yes, God takes us on this really cool journey and shows us things that we can't even imagine, so that the next time he asks to go a little step farther with him, that we're prepared to say yes again, And just when I hear you guys tell those moments where, when I can just envision this little girl grabbing the horses, what's his name again?
Boston.
Yeah. Just grabbing Boston's nose and you expecting him just to go crazy, but he just gently leaned into her, right?
Yeah.
So that was
that
was a moment for you that changed the rest of your life.
Yeah, it really
That's
was.
amazing.
And the cool thing is it keeps happening. Like you said, there's still those, oh man, I don't know if I can say yes to this one. This one's hard, but just knowing how faithful he's been. And like on the other side of those hard yeses, I wouldn't trade it for anything,
And sometimes it turns out to not be what you expected. So like you guys felt like you had your arms wrapped around a beautiful piece of property that was perfect. And then you start raising funds for it. And then it gets ripped out from under you, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, but you
disappeared.
Which can be discouraging, but you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, right?
Yeah.
Every day.
We got it. So.
Yeah, we know what people. If it was easy to say yes and easy to be a follower of Christ, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
And
which is why he asks those hard questions. And why he makes those hard statements too. He's almost, he's screening out those whose heart are not ready to say yes.
Right. Yeah. And it's Kevin and I have said before, it's man, to live a life of service is so expensive.
Mm.
It's expensive emotionally, yeah, spiritually, everything. It comes at such a cost, but yet it also has such a reward and such a return. And I think the difference is the point that I always like to say is, the return may not even be immediate. The return may be, eternity before you realize what the return was, or at least the full value of the return.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. It's hard sometimes when you don't see that immediate return. You get discouraged. You get, man, am I still supposed to be doing this? And it's hard. And so again, like Kevin said, we started the podcast just to encourage people that are either on the fence about saying yes, or to encourage those that have already said yes, but are kind of hanging on by a thread, right? And waiting on that next affirmation. And so, yeah, it's awesome. And I can't, I want to touch one more time, Krista, before we go.
Okay.
On your website, freedomreigns.com. And, obviously we talked about people can donate, people can sign up to volunteer. Is there any specific thing you're looking, like a specific type of volunteer? Is there a need that you guys have, and kind of what's your next step as an organization?
Yeah, so I really feel like additional session leaders, especially those that just have a heart for mentorship. We have amazing session leaders already. Don't get me wrong. They're incredible. But as we know, God has called us to continue to grow. We know that need is going to exponentially increase, Lord willing, when we have a larger facility that can meet the demand we have. And so just great session leaders that, are willing to just simply show up, be consistent in a kid's life, and be the hands and feet of Jesus to them with the help of a horse. You don't need to come with horse experience at all. We can teach you everything from the ground up. In fact, most of our session leaders come not having any horse experience, and we teach that to them, which is really fun to do. But anyone that has a heart for the ranch in any form or capacity, like, come on and be a part of it in whatever you can do.
That's cool.
Next, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you were about to answer it. I was about to ask you what the next step is.
What's next? Well, we're right in the middle of our spring season. We'll do summer and fall season, and we actually only take 3 weeks in August off, and then the holidays in December, and then January, because January in Tennessee, like, no one needs to be outside trying to do anything, or March this past week. So our immediate prayer and the biggest need is we are desperately seeking land in this area, pretty immediate to 840-65. Just as we're only allowed to operate 3 days per week per our lease. And we could really, if we moved to a facility that was like, let's say it was ready and we didn't have the moving process, we could take about 20 to 25 kids off that wait list right away.
Wow.
And so we're just praying for God to meet that need in whatever way he sees is best. That's what we want, because nothing else will, everything else won't work. So we want, that's our prayer and our need.
What's the ideal amount of acreage?
Minimum of 25. 40 would be the most we feel like we could sustain reasonably. That would actually allow us to grow our own hay, to be self-sustaining that way. And then just in the South Williamson County or Northern Murray County area, which is the impossible area of Middle Tennessee right now, but that's why our campaign to raise that is called Unimpossible. So
I love that.
So all you guys listening, we need 40 acres.
That's right.
In Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it doesn't have to have anything on it. We can build it up.
But listen to that though. Like 40 acres immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use the word rescue. 40 acres immediately rescues 25 children.
Wow. And it doesn't have to be purchased by the ranch. They're willing to lease it.
Yeah. Long-term lease is awesome too.
Yeah. So you don't even have to get rid of your property. You just have to be willing to allow it to be used by an awesome ministry.
Yeah. And the horses are going to provide good fertilizer. So if you
we got
later,
the best compost around, y'all.
later down the road.
That's
Hey,
awesome.
part of our vision for the future is being able to have a garden that is self-sustaining, and like families can literally take crops home that kids get in sessions that are grown right at the ranch. So we have to have the space for that. That'd be awesome.
So one question before I come and visit, can I do you feed horses sugar cubes? Is that right?
So you can. Sugar cubes are not necessarily the best thing, just like they aren't for people. But we have a horse cookie jar at the ranch. It's literally a ceramic jar that's horse cookies, and people love to bring treats. So there's special treats you can like buy from Tractor Supply or anything like that. Or, I think we can make an exception if you want to bring an apple or carrots or two. Those are acceptable snacks.
No sugar cubes though.
I mean, I think we could maybe let you have a couple if you need to.
If you have 40 acres, you can definitely.
You can bring all the sugar cubes you want.
Yeah.
The girls might eat them before the horses, though. I'll tell you that.
That's funny.
Cool.
So I have one last question, and then Kevin, if you have one asked, if not, close this out. What is your favorite horse movie?
Oh. So every horse movie has to be cheesy. It's just required. But non-cheesy horse movie, I will say Secretariat.
That's
Pretty
a good one.
awesome for non-cheesy, but cheesy. Oh man, there's so many great cheesy ones.
My favorite one, and I can't tell you the name of it, but you'll know probably when I describe it to you, is the horse that ran up the ramp and jumped off, dove into the swimming pool.
Yes, Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken.
Yes.
It's a good one. And it's actually based on a real thing.
Yeah.
That actually happened. Like that was a real thing.
That's so cool.
Those are brave cowgirls, though. I don't dive off a pier on a horse. Like just.
Well, my last word I want to give out to our listeners. Carissa is one of the most pure examples that I know of someone who God knit her together in her mother's womb, which we find in Psalm 139. And then she is living into the good works that God prepared in advance for her to do, which we find in Ephesians 2:10. So those are two like bookend passages of scripture that I just that blow my mind every time I think about them. That he, before you even existed as a human being, as a live human being, he had planned in advance good works for you to do. And as you were being formed in your mother's womb, he was already preparing you. So even, and it's really tricky. It's tricky to talk about, anybody's really hard childhood they went through, because God obviously doesn't cause those things to happen. But the fact that he can take the very difficult childhood that you went through and craft it and redeem it and use it in the way he's using you on the ranch is mind-boggling. Like I should
be a statistic right now.
Totally. I remember one time I was in counseling because I had a very difficult childhood as well. And the guy, after about 4 or 5 sessions, he just looked at me and said, "It is an absolute miracle that you're sitting here in front of me right now." And that's the same thing I would say about you, that, you said it earlier, but God has brought you to a point where you can come on a podcast about nonprofit leaders who have said yes to Jesus and be an example for lots of other people. But it came through the pain of what you experienced as a child. And that is what this is all about. And because in a lot of, the intuitive things to say is that some of those experiences may have even disqualified you from what you're doing. But the fact that he always calls the unqualified, he always calls he always calls the least likely people to do the greatest work. So thank you so much for saying yes and stepping out into this very scary vision that God put on your heart. And that land's going to come. It's going to show up at the perfect time when God intends it for it to, and the money's going to be there. You just
Amen.
keep being faithful. Wake up in the morning, put one foot in front of the other, and keep loving Jesus. So thank you so
It's my
much.
joy.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for listening to the episode. We are thrilled to have you. If you could do us a favor in whatever podcast platform you listen to, leave us a review, whether it's good or bad. We just like reviews, and it helps get the word out to other people. If you're on Facebook, you can join our Facebook group, Kingdom Effect Podcast, and we usually post some extra things there and let you know when we're going to be live. So thanks for listening, and you guys say yes to Jesus. We'll see you next time on the Kingdom Effect Podcast.